All right. So we're going here. Um, you kind of notice before we even get started, I've got kind of Zoom running here. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but I actually record every single lecture. Um, so I'll kind of show you a little bit more about this after I do introductions, things like that. But hopefully you're in the right spot. This is Econ E371. I think it's called what? It's basically an econometrics course, right? So I think it's called applied econometrics technically. Um, but I'm Professor Lannis. I've taught this every semester I've been here. This is my third year here at IU. I was before over at Ball State for 8 years. So if you're not from Indiana, you probably don't have any idea where that's at, but it's another university in Indiana here. So I've taught this course a lot. I think I've got it ironed out pretty good, kind of where I like it. How many of you are econ majors? So almost all of you. Great. So this will give you an advantage on a lot of other schools' econ major programs where this isn't a requirement. I don't know how you get by without working with data these days out there in the real world. And so we're really going to dive into how you actually work with data, some of the theory behind it, but a lot, my goal in this class is to teach you some of the theory, but really make sure you can kind of put this into practice. That's why it's called applied econometrics. Econometrics would just be sitting up here and doing a bunch of matrix algebra, and it's not that much, well, I shouldn't say that, not that much fun. Some people really enjoy that, but actually seeing it applied to real world data sets to me is what gets me really excited, right? That's kind of what I use econometrics for. And I'll try to bring in a bunch of different data sets so that hopefully I'm hitting kind of a bunch of different people's interests. Okay. So kind of just getting through the basics today. We'll kind of summarize, go through the syllabus. I'll actually kind of jump in, kind of show you how we use a data management program that we're going to use this semester called Stata or Stata. It's kind of like data, depends on kind of who you ask. I think I usually default to calling it Stata, but hopefully if you don't have that preference, you'll know still be okay with calling it that. So what are we going to need? So I've got a book assigned to this class because I have to. If it were me, I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy it. I'm never going to assign anything out of it. It's the best book that's out there. So it's a good additional resource, but I'm never going to assign readings or assign problems out of it. So if you don't want to buy it, don't feel like you have to, right? Save some money. I understand, these textbooks get expensive. I wish that there was an econometric book that would just go purely online. I like to use books like that because you can still have a book and it's a lot cheaper, but still the old good hardcover. You can find some old versions of it that are really cheap though, if you do want that additional resource, but you won't need it. What you will need kind of in this class is the Canvas website. That's where everything is going to live, right? I put all the data files there. I post announcements there out of class or just posting it, things that I did mention in class. That's where I'm going to communicate with you. I'll eventually talk about, we're going to use some kind of like in-class quizzes here. So you'll need Canvas in order to do that. So you'll need a smartphone, a laptop, something in class that you can access Canvas with. I'll talk a little bit about these in-class quizzes in a second, but that's why that's a required material. I don't think any of you probably go anywhere without your phone, so I don't think that's a crazy ask, right? But you will, when we're working with this data, I would highly encourage you to bring a laptop and work along with me. I think that's going to be the most effective way you learn this in class. So don't just bring a phone to do the in-class quizzes, bring a laptop so you can work along with me when we're using these data sets. If you want a calculator, I think I have 4 function here. You might need to like square something. It's not going to be any crazy math on the exam, the midterm and the final. I said exam, sorry, exams. We have a midterm and a final. But if you want a calculator, really for this class, I don't even care if it's a graphing calculator. Just something that you might be able to use if your brain kind of freezes up when you got anxiety about the exam. Right? But it shouldn't be any that difficult of math that you would need something any more than a 4 function calculator. All right. You'll need the lecture slides. So every week I'll post the lecture slides for that week. I'll generally put up a skeleton version where I leave some things out that we're going to be doing in class. So even though I have Zoom running in the background right now and it's recording my audio and everything that you see on this screen, it's recording. So it will record eventually once we get to working in Stata with the data sets, it'll record that as well. What it won't record is sometimes in class after we talk about something, I switch over to the dot cam, I draw a bunch, I don't know, here's all the data points, run a regression, we got a line of best fit, we'll talk about all this stuff later on. But anything I do up here isn't being recorded. It's still recording that PowerPoint slide screen. Okay. So coming to class is how you're going to get anything that I do up here in the dot cam. And I like to switch over to this quite a bit. This is kind of where I try to give you more support or try to help make better sense of what we've been talking about. So even though we've got the slides as kind of, X causes Y, I do a lot of why X causes Y up here on the dot cam. Okay. So they're not perfect substitutes, your econ majors, right? I don't want to make it a perfect substitute, but it is an imperfect substitute where if you have to miss class, you can go back and kind of listen to that audio recording and get a pretty good replacement of class. Okay. And especially when I'm working in Stata, kind of working through with these data sets, that's a good resource to be able to go back because I'll give you some problem sets where you have to do something similar just with different data. So you can always go back to these videos. So where will they be? I'm going to try to have to use all three here today. It's going to be fun. So let's go here. So actually, I think I'm signed in here. So if I go to YouTube, right, I think I have the link in the syllabus and it's somewhere. Oops. I can get, somewhere in the first week of slides. There's a link to the YouTube playlist, but if you just simply search Professor Lantis, I'm the first profile that should pop up. If you then go to playlists, here's our course, right? This is where all the videos will live. I've currently got, you don't want to listen to me talk, the steps that I'll actually go through in class today about how you get this program Stata up and running. So it's kind of a nice help video. It's not very long, but it's kind of how to get that accessible to your specific laptop. I'll walk through it today, but I just wanted to have something up there that you could go back to. Also, I had to create the playlist, so I needed some video to post there. But this is where I'll post every single class recording. Okay. Any questions on that before I keep moving? Okay, shouldn't be too bad yet. Yep, so there's the link to the playlist, but once again, it's always easiest to search my name, Professor Lantis. So what do you care about? How do you get the grade that you want in this class, right? So how are you going to be graded? 30% of your grade is going to come from 2 exams, so a total of 60%, right? So I've got 30% of your grade is going to come from the midterm, 30% is going to come from the final, okay? And so I probably should really change this so it says 60%. I guess that's not quite clear now that I'm saying it out loud. It's 30% for each exam for a total of 60%. Right? We'll then have these kind of bi-weekly Canvas quizzes. So every 2 weeks, I'll post a quiz on Canvas after Thursday's class, and it'll be due at the end of the day, Monday, or actually, I think that's what I have it kind of set for the syllabus. So you'll have, however you count it, 4 or 5 days to kind of get on, do those quizzes. I'll get up some practice problems for those quizzes well in advance. So you'll have a set of questions to kind of review before you sit down and take those quizzes. Now, the nice thing about those quizzes, they're not a huge percent of your grade, 12%, but do you think I'm going to be able to police what's in front of you when you're taking those quizzes for every single student? No, right? So they're essentially open book, open note, whatever you want to call it. You can have all those materials available to you in front of you when you sit down to take those quizzes, okay? So they'll, like I said, be about every 2 weeks, with the exception around that midterm. It gets kind of like a week in between there where we have that midterm exam. So kind of a total of 6 of those throughout the semester, okay? Is there anything else I wanted to mention about the quizzes? I think I've got a slide for them here in a second. Yeah, so let's see if I forgot anything. So 6 quizzes about every 2 weeks, Thursday. I think, so I put here, I'm thinking of my other class. Not due at the end of the day Monday. I actually will give you a little bit extra time, although, it's probably best if you get it done by the end of the day Monday. I think I actually have the due dates all set to be before we start class that following Tuesday, okay? Sorry, I had a couple classes this morning, all the big B251. So my brain is thinking there. I should probably wait to say things until I get to the slide so I don't forget. They're not meant to be the most difficult quizzes. Like, as long as you're preparing and looking at those practice problems before you sit down to take them, I think most students get a pretty good majority of the points from these quizzes as long as they take them seriously. And I'll provide these practice problems for them along with some answers so you can kind of see what the correct answer is. So you will have some good study materials before you sit down to take these quizzes. Okay. The other categories, problem sets and in-class quizzes. So these problem sets, or so in-class quizzes, we'll go first. Attendance is not necessarily required for this class, but if you fall behind, if you miss class, you're going to fall behind very quick. Okay. So, um, I will not announce which classes these will be, but some classes I will use in-class quizzes. Okay. So 12 random classes throughout the semester. I don't want to take too much of class time with these. So it'll be on average about one every week. Right. Some weeks we might have two, some weeks we might have any, especially that week around the midterm. But 12 different classes throughout the semester will have an in-class quiz. Okay. So what I'll do with these quizzes, I'm going to do them on Canvas. And I'm going to say, they're not going to show up until we're in class. We cover whatever the material we're going through. And I say, hey, we're going to take a quiz right now. Sometime it's at the beginning of class, end, middle, it changes, right? I hit publish. I have it open for 5 minutes or so. Usually these are only one or two questions, maybe at most. If I kind of have some easy questions, I might make a quiz 3 questions long. And then you have 5 minutes to kind of go through. Usually it's stuff that we just talked about. They're not meant to be very difficult. It's more of like a check, or do you have a pulse and have you been paying attention the last, 15, 20 minutes? Okay. So this is my way of trying to kind of reward attendance, right? Now making it random makes it a little bit, you can't kind of pre-plan which classes you're gonna miss, but it also doesn't make it so you have to be at every single class in order to do all of this. Now, what I'll do at the end is I drop your 2 lowest. So even if you happen to miss 2 classes when I'm using these in-class quizzes, those will essentially get dropped. Okay. That's kind of my way of protecting, if you do have an illness or something where you miss class, I don't want to have to ask you, I don't want to have you prove that someone, the worst thing is when someone tells me they have to go to a funeral. I don't want to ask for documentation that that person actually died. That makes me feel like an awful human being, right? So by dropping these 2 lowest and not having every single class, right, where it's 12 random throughout the semester, I think that bakes in enough sick days for you that wouldn't count against your grade. Okay. Now, if it's an extenuating circumstance, I had a student one semester who was in the hospital for like 3 weeks because I got in a car wreck. Obviously, let me know if it's going to be an extended period of time you're going to be out of class and we can work something out. If it's a very extreme situation, but I pray to God none of you find yourself in that situation this semester, right? So for just a kind of one-off illness, or you got a funeral, or you have to, a job interview or something, that's kind of what I bake in, dropping those 2 lowest, and the fact that I don't use them in every single class. Okay. Is that clear? Any questions on that? Head nods go a long way. Okay. All right. So the problem sets are going to be 24% of your grade. So if we go back to that other slide, that's a pretty good chunk, right? It's getting pretty close to a midterm exam, right? So I want you to take these seriously. These are what I think is probably going to give you the best um, skill set when you're going out applying for jobs that you can talk about. Something like that other people might not have done is actually work with actual data sets in a data management program like Stata. So they're going to be roughly every 2 weeks. They're not as regimented as like the kind of biweekly quizzes, because it kind of depends on how quickly we cover the material, kind of what we're doing in class. I sometimes will hold off of posting them a class or two, but they're going to be roughly every 2 weeks, kind of like the quizzes, right? There's 6 of them, so roughly every 2 weeks you'll kind of have one of these due. Generally, when I post them, you'll have probably like a week and a half to 2 weeks to work on them, right? Once again, depending on how you count days, going from like Tuesday to Thursday or something like that. So what I always try to do is have them be due on Thursday nights. Excuse me. So I'll usually, like, let's say I was going to assign one today. I post it after class on this Tuesday. It'd be due next Thursday by the end of the day. That way it kind of gives you about a week and a half to work on it, but also it's at the end of the day Thursday. So we'll have class the day that it's due. If you have any kind of last minute questions, you can kind of ask me on those class periods. Okay. So all of these are going to be using Stata. I say primarily, that's really the only thing we're going to use for these problem sets. There might be a question or two in them where you could work it out by hand in like the first problem set. But after that one, it's all going to be work that you should be doing in Stata. I'll put these assignments up on Canvas with the data sets that you need. And then you'll download those data sets, open them up in this program called Stata, and you'll kind of do all of your work there. This will make a little bit more sense as we work through what this might kind of show you what this looks like. But the actual assignment will be posted to Canvas along with the data sets that you'll need. Okay. So once again, copy paste things and don't check. We've got 6 and they're worth 24% of your grade. That should have been a 4 there. There we go. So here's just kind of a summary of some important dates for the semester. You know, the other ones you might care about. The main one is this midterm, which is going to be in class on October 16th. And then the final exam, our kind of assigned time slot, is going to be that Tuesday from 12:40 to 2:40. Okay. So make sure that you don't have conflicts on those dates. If you know that you're going to have a conflict on either one, let me know well in advance. If you let me know what things well in advance, it's always easier for me to work something out with you. Don't let me know the night before. Okay. So that should be kind of a pretty quick summary of the syllabus. If you want to go through it a little bit more in detail, the Word document is up there on Canvas. I want to try to save us some time today to make sure we can kind of work through how you get Stata working on your device and kind of show you what that looks like. So I wanted to go through this relatively quickly. And at this point, you've had enough first day of classes, kind of expectation syllabus things where it's, you know, I think I can go through a little bit quicker. So how do you be successful in this class? I put read the book. You know, when I say book, look through the slides maybe before this. That's really the book for this class. I'll post these slides before we even meet in class to cover that material. I'm not expecting you to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I think reading through the material, kind of just looking at some of the terminology, kind of a rough idea of what we're going to talk about, it primes your brain for then what we're going to talk about in class and makes class time a lot more effective and productive. So when I say read the book here, it's really look through the slides before we go through them that week. That would be, I think, a good practice if I was going to give some advice. Show up to class once again. So we go back, what was it? Oops. 4% of your grade doesn't sound like much, but when you're on the cut point of like going from like a B plus to an A minus, 4% is enough to kind of, or even 1 or 2% can be enough to bump you up to that next letter grade. Right. And if that doesn't matter a whole lot to you, that's fine. But I get a lot of people where their grade going from like a B minus to a B really matters to them at the end of the semester. So this is one way to kind of guarantee if you're on that cutoff, it's going to push you over the edge. Okay. Practice, practice, practice. So you can use the end of the chapter questions. I would probably rely a lot more on these sample questions that I'm going to be posting to Canvas before every single quiz, as well as I'll put up some practice exams when we get closer to that midterm and the final. So working through these practice problems I'm going to be putting up on Canvas is really, I think, important for preparing yourself for the quizzes and preparing yourself for the exams. Take those Canvas quizzes seriously. I think one thing I failed to mention, those quizzes, it's not like you can jump in and out of them. Once you start it, you'll have 60 minutes to complete it. Okay. So even though I posted after class Thursday, it's not due until the following class Tuesday starts. You can't like start and stop it. Once you start it, you've got 60 minutes to complete it. Okay. And they're generally 10 to 12 questions, right? So it's not a ton of questions, about 5 minutes per question. So time shouldn't be an issue. If you have all your materials in front of you, have those practice problems that maybe you've already worked through, that would be a thing that I would suggest. Take them seriously. I think you can get a good majority of the points on that as well. Okay. So I already mentioned kind of open notes. So you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. The one thing that'll start killing your grade is if you just start missing things and not turning things in. So even if you know you don't have enough time to complete an assignment, do as much as you can. 50% doesn't tank your grade near as bad as a 0. Okay. So, you know, if you get into a bind, even with the quizzes, I didn't feel like I could prepare. It's, you know, I don't know, an hour before class starts, I got to sit down and take it. Even if you just completely guess and get some points, that's a lot better for your grade than 0. When we start talking about averages, I'll even kind of show you how quickly zeros can like pull the average down, right? 50s will pull it down, but not near as much. Okay. So try to take an attempt at everything. If you don't, it's going to really start to impact your grade pretty quickly. Don't be afraid to ask questions. So help me, help you. I think some of my movie references might be getting a little old, but I'm over in Wiley. So this is actually my first time teaching in Hodge. I've never been taught in a classroom in here. It's kind of a little bit of a hike for me. So I'll try to get to class quickly and on time. I'm glad it's not 90 degrees and 90% humidity like it was like all summer. But if you ever want to stop by and ask questions, I should be there on Monday, Wednesdays from 10 to 1. I'll guarantee I'll be in my office during that time slot. So I'm over in Wiley room 309. If that time doesn't work for you, always feel free to send me an email. We can try to set up something by appointment. I'll be very upfront with you. Mondays and Wednesdays are going to be the main days where I can schedule something. Tuesday, Thursdays, I'm basically teaching all day. I don't have a lot of available time to meet. Fridays are just what I use for meetings. So week to week, my schedule looks wildly different on Fridays. So there might be times on Fridays where I can find a time to meet with you, but it's harder for me to guarantee. But between the hours of 8 and 4 on Monday and Wednesday, even if those office hours don't work for you, we can probably find another time to meet if it's, if you have questions or you need help with one of the assignments. Okay. Or if you just want to stop by and chat. I had an old student from 371 actually who stopped by yesterday and we talked about, what was it? SRS. So some composite rating for basketball and running a regression with it. And he was trying to do some fun project. So I always like, even if it's not questions related to class, it's something a little bit outside of class. That makes office hours a little bit more fun for me. I don't get stuck just working the whole time. Okay. I do have not a G, I have a GA for this class. So they, you can email them if you're not getting a quick response from me. So if it's like a Tuesday or Thursday and you want a quick response, I'd probably email them first because they're probably going to be able to get to it. I'll be completely honest, like I said, I'm teaching all day Tuesdays and Thursdays. Depending on when you email me, I might not get to it until Wednesday morning if you were to email me Tuesday, right? So if you want a very quick response, you can try to email them first. But I will eventually get to your emails. Like I said, it might just take, I can definitely get to it within 24 hours. But if you want an immediate response on a Tuesday or Thursday, it might be best to email them first. They'll help me kind of proctor the exam, but for all intents, you probably won't ever interact with them. They'll have some office hours if you do want to kind of go to them instead of me. I don't know, you don't like me, or I don't know, you're just scared to come talk to me. They'll have some office hours, which they're going to get to me by the end of the week. So they aren't posting the syllabus yet. I think it still says TBD. I will update that syllabus once they get me those office hours, and you'll have that as an additional resource as well. Okay. All right. Any questions? We're keep moving. Okay. Sometimes I get on a roll here. Always stop me. I can kind of get going. So what's the goal of this course? All right. So if I had to kind of put this in a nutshell, by the end of the semester, what we're really wanting to try to do is estimate what we call causal relationships between two different things or two different variables. Okay. Now, you've probably talked about in your other stats courses, correlation coefficients, right? That's one measure of this course. Did you guys so I teach 370 or I don't, sorry, I teach it in the summer sometimes. But I don't know what every instructor goes through. You guys worked through like regression. You talked about regression, like multiple linear regression even. No, just simple regression. Okay, probably a lot of it. Okay. I go through a little multiple linear regression. A lot of other instructors I know stop at simple linear regression. We'll get there pretty quickly. Probably by next week, we'll kind of start talking about regressions. So that's kind of our main goal of the course. We're going to take these regressions and basically extend them from what you learned in 370 so that we're not just getting what we would say correlations. We're actually picking up on causation, right? So, kind of an age-old example is like, does class size impact student test scores, right? Well, you might run this regression. Oh, yeah, really big classes, students don't do as well. They don't get as much one-on-one interaction. That looks like there's a causal relationship there, right? But it might just be a correlation because who's in these large classes? Maybe students who weren't as on top of things and couldn't sign up for the smaller classes, right? You could actually end up with the complete reverse correlation where it looks like it's a negative impact from being in kind of these, that positive relationship wouldn't necessarily be as strong of a positive relationship because maybe the good students who are on top of things are more likely to be enrolled in these small courses. And so the small courses have better scores, right? And so we're going to try to find ways to control for those types of things so that we can make sure we're actually getting a causal relationship. Some other just interesting questions that we could then start to answer if we had the data. If you're looking at like mortgage applications, do mortgage denials, does race play a factor, right? Are people of certain races getting denied more often, right? We can start to actually answer some pretty interesting questions, right? Questions of discrimination, right? And we're not just saying, is it correlated, right? We can control for a lot of other factors, right? And actually see if there's some discrimination going on, okay? Do cigarette taxes actually reduce smoking, right? So we can kind of get data on cigarette taxes and look at cigarette use, but also control for all the other things that were going on at the time, like maybe what's the average price of a pack of cigarettes? That changes over time, right? So even if we tax something, if the price of a pack of cigarettes at the same time we've got a supply increase and it dramatically decreases the price, well, we want to be able to control for that. So that's going to be kind of our goal throughout the semester is find ways to control for these outside factors. We might start making some predictions. We won't work as much with time series data in this class. It would probably be like the next level of applied econometrics. but we might start to use old data to try to make predictions about future data, right? So like we might look at previous GDP measures or previous indicators from different countries to try to predict what the 2024 or 2025 GDP of a country would be. Okay. So some different types of data we'll look at just to kind of set us up before we jump into looking at some. So we're going to have cross-sectional data. So this is going to be when we have characteristics that are recorded for like many, many different people, but at one point in time. So that would be like if I collected information from all of you on what your current GPA is right now. It's one point in time, but I have a data point for for a bunch of different subjects, right? That's cross-sectional data. So just one time period, but many individuals recorded. Time series data is going to be I have multiple time periods, right? But I only have kind of one subject. So this would be like if I had the United States GDP for the last 100 years. That would be my time series data. Now, we'll probably work a lot more with this next type of data set, which is mashing those two together and having a panel data set. Panel data sets allow us to do some pretty cool things that we'll talk about throughout the semester. And it's basically like taking a cross-sectional time series and mashing together. So in my example, instead of just having the United States for the last 100 years, it would be like having every single country, so many, many subjects over the last 100 years. So I've now got many subjects and many time periods. This is kind of would likely be our ideal data set. We would like to have a panel data set if possible for most questions that we want to try to ask. Okay. So I think I've got some examples of some data that we're going to be looking at. So cross-sectional, I've got a bunch of different cities and I have what their population in 2020. So I just kind of chose the last kind of census. This would be cross-sectional data. Here I've got another example. We don't just need to have one variable. So here I've got a bunch of different countries now, so many subjects. It's still one point in time. I had some old 2011 data laying around, but I've got several variables. So I don't just have to have one variable, right? Cross-sectional data, I can have many subjects and I can have many different variables collected on them. It's just that all three of these variables were collected at the same time period, right? In 2011 for these countries. Okay. Time series data, I kind of already mentioned this. So instead of GDP, I think I looked at the unemployment rate here. So I've got the United States unemployment rate, and I've got a bunch of different time periods. That would be time series data. My panel data set, we'll use this a little bit throughout the semester. So I've got like the ISTEP scores for 3 years. I think I actually have more years in the data set than, we'll use, but this one I only had 3 years. So I have multiple points in time, and I have multiple students. So here I only showed you 3 students. The actual data set that I have and we could work with has like every student in Indiana that took the ISTEP. And like I said, I think I have 6 years in that data set. So a really big panel data set. In fact, how old are you guys? So 2011, you might be a little bit too young to be in this data set. My students are starting to age out of this data set. But if you took the ISTEP in 2011, you would be in this data set. Right? Now, if you don't know what the ISTEP is, I forget, not everybody's from Indiana. It's just an Indiana standardized test that a lot of elementary school students, middle school students have to take. All right. So at this point, let's take a break from the slides. We won't dive into material completely here. But what I do want to do is switch over. Oh. Are you both? Okay, you're all seeing the same thing. So if I go here, right? So, I already had this pulled open. You can go to Canvas. So we'll go to our class. So you'll notice I try to break things down week by week, kind of putting all the files that we'll need in that week. So here I had this week's slides. I've got syllabus, and I have a bunch of other files here. So some of these files are going to be, this was like tips and tricks to remember with Stata. Here's the steps for getting Stata kind of downloaded to your device, which I'm just about to walk through, but this is just them in a Word document form. I've got some Stata commands. This won't make a whole lot of sense yet. We'll talk a lot about what those commands are the next couple weeks, but this is kind of a place where you can go back and it kind of has a nice summary of the basic commands that we'll first start out with. And I then put a couple of different types of data sets because I want to show you that you don't just have to have data sets that are already in the format of Stata. So that's what this .dta is. So just like, XLSX is an Excel files kind of extension. The DTA will be Stata's kind of extension. Those are things that you can just open right up in Stata. However, if you have a data set you're interested in working with, and it's in Excel or it's in CSV format, I'll show you ways, once we start working with Stata, you can actually convert those into this .dta, and you can then work with them in Stata, okay? So that's why I have those there for now. After this first week, almost everything I post up here will be a .dta file, just to make it easier on you guys, okay? And then this do file will make a little more sense once I start kind of working with that. Probably not today, but probably next class, okay? I also have up here, before we dive into Stata, a background survey, and let me make sure I've got the time. So this is kind of how I'll do like the in-class quizzes. I'll publish it. I'll then come down here. Okay, I'll make sure, all right, when's the due date? I have the available time. So as soon as I publish, it's available. This is going to be due August 31st by the end of the day. I'll hit save. So by the end of the day, Sunday, this is an ungraded kind of survey. This is not a quiz, one of the 6 quizzes for points. But if you could, by the end of the day, Sunday, get on and fill this out, I would greatly appreciate it. It gives me a little more information about your guys' background. So if we're looking at like what the questions are. Nope, nope. I hit the wrong thing, didn't I? Background survey, preview. So I'm asking you about things like your highest math course you've taken. What are you considered a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? What interests you in the field of economics? What's your favorite class that you've taken in econ so far? And then do you have any coding experience? So a little bit of this is kind of helps me cater the class and use data sets in class that line up with more people's interests. Also, this one kind of lets me know how quickly or slowly I need to kind of start out as we're working on certain things. And also just gives me some background information about who I'm talking to. Okay. So if you don't mind getting on, filling this out by the end of the day, Sunday, I then will kind of take a look at it and maybe make small adjustments accordingly next week. Okay. It also gives me some data that we could maybe use later on in the class as well. And now I won't attach anyone's name to anything that you respond here, although none of it's necessarily that, I don't think will be anything that you care that anyone knows. But that is now up there. It's just not for any points. It's just a survey. So I just wanted to mention that before we get going. The next thing we will do is work through how do we actually get this program Stata on our devices. So before I start, who has already done this? Has anyone tried it? No? That's fine. I just making sure that I didn't see like, half the class raise their hand and then I'm really going slow through this. Now, it can be a little bit of an issue. Some of the tech stuff on this, I'm showing you on this device, on this specific web browser. I know that depending on what type of laptop you have, occasionally what type of browser you're using, you can run into some technical issues. So I want you to try to mimic what I'm doing either right now, probably that's the best time to do it, or very early on in this week so we can get all these bugs worked out so that I can start having you work along with me in Stata, really starting as quickly as this Thursday's class. So right now, you should try to do what I'm doing, okay? So the very first thing we're going to do, and I'm doing this on a device that isn't mine because I have the actual program. They don't want to pay for a license for all of you, so they have like a universal license that we're going to have to use from like I use IU Anywhere. So the first thing that you'll want to do, oops, if I can hit the right, there we go, is search cloud storage on 1.iu. Okay, so if you go to 1.iu.edu, search cloud storage. Should be this icon here. Okay. So we're going to go in, we're going to log in. So you're going to use your IU username and password or passphrase. Don't want to save this here. Now, here's where yours might look a little bit different than mine. Now, if you've done this for other courses and it's already done, that's fine. If you have a green check mark here, this step doesn't apply to you. You've already got it set up. If you don't have a green check mark down here next to this OneDrive/-IU, I'm going to show you how you get it. So is everyone seeing this? Yes? No? If you're not seeing it, now is the time to speak up. We're good? Okay. So if I do this little drop down, mine says deauthorize, right? Because mine's already authorized. It doesn't matter. I can switch it off. If it didn't have a green check mark next to it, you should have this blue authorize button. All you're going to do is click that authorize button. Now we got the green check mark. Okay. So what this allows us to do is to kind of access files from our OneDrive when we're using the Stata program. Okay. Everybody with me on that step? That's not nothing crazy there. All right. We're then going to go to IU anywhere. Search that in 1.iu. I'm going to click on this IU anywhere icon. At this point, it's probably going to ask you to detect Citrix workspace. Is this what everyone's seeing? Anyone seeing anything different? What are you seeing? I'm not going to help. Okay, you've already done it. So you're a step ahead. So not that you've already done, like purposely done it, but you might have done something for another class with it. So at this point, you'd want to detect Citrix, right? Hit OK. Some of you, like what his issue was, is it sent him straight to the screen. So that's okay. You might have had like a setting where it automatically allowed it. You didn't have to kind of go through and detect it. Once you get to this screen, though, this is where you should be. So after you hit detect on that Citrix, this is what you should see. Is everyone seeing this? No? Who's having issues?
Show me this.
Yeah, so you should hit continue. Okay. Yep. Sorry. And then it should. Did that send you?
Now let's show it.
Okay, so some of you at this point might be getting this thing where like it's hitting continue, it's not working. Depending on your laptop and what browser you're using, you might have to, there's a selection thing down there that says use the light version. Are you seeing that? You can do that. If you want to try a different browser, Chrome, I have this in the video, and now I'm trying to do this from memory. I think it's in the Word document, so let me pull that up real quick so I don't tell you the wrong one. So we've got why is this not opening up my files? Sorry, it's being slow. I'm getting the spinning wheel of death here. There we go. So if I go back here, status.
Okay, so should I just?
Yeah. This is the. Sorry, give me 1 second here. If I can find this. There we go. All right. So this was the tips, tricks, and reminders file that I had on Canvas. So if you're getting to that step where you're trying, like Citrix it's not detecting Citrix, there should be an option where you can go to change Citrix workspace app and then kind of select the light version. Yours, it already had it like as an option down below. And once you do that, it should then send you to kind of this interface. Did that work? Okay. Does anybody else have any issues at that point? Is everybody on this screen now up to here? Okay. So like I said, I think it's Chrome and Firefox are the ones that tend to have fewer issues for whatever reason. So like, are you using Safari by chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand the technical side of things enough to like know why exactly certain browsers work and certain don't, but it tends to be that Safari for whatever reason has some issues with Citrix. But that light version has all the same capabilities that once we get the program open, so you don't have to worry about that. Yep. Okay. So once we're at this point, and here we got the file here. We've already got cloud storage. We did that. Where do I want? I can show you this other file. Right. So at this point, if we've activated Citrix, we can then kind of go to apps and simply select Stata. So there's going to be some of you where this will work. So if you go to apps, you go down here to Stata, Stata Now 19 is what it's now called. You should be able to open the program up now. It might take a second. It's doing it over here on my other screen. And I'll drag it over once it opens up. So the first time it'll kind of take a little bit longer. Once you get it opened up one time, it should be a little bit quicker. There we go. Okay. So this is kind of what the initial kind of state of program will look like. Does anybody have an issue opening it up from that apps icon? If you did, don't be afraid to say it. Yeah. It didn't like it. You weren't able to open it up from the apps. So if you go over here to this gear and go to account settings, make sure that you've got activate Citrix Workspace app. Make sure you select that. Sometimes I think like under your settings, it won't default to it. So when we did the thing with Citrix earlier, it might not have worked. So sometimes you'll have to go to that gear and make sure that you've activated that Citrix Workspace. Then if you go back to apps and then try to open up, that should resolve the issue usually.
Yeah.
Did that help resolve it? Anybody else having issues at this point? Yeah. So like I said, it might take a long time. Like, is it showing you down in the bottom that it's like running through all these things? It might just take a minute. Sometimes, are you on a Mac? Yes. Sometimes it will not open up directly like it did for me, but it will be down on your toolbar. It kind of depends on what settings you have, whether or not you allow apps to like open up on your screen. I don't know what it's called, about what you would have to select, but it like prevents things from just automatically opening up onto your screen. So it might be down there at the bottom. The icon that it will look like, see, this is why I have two computers. So I'm going to switch over to my laptop real quick. For those of you on a Mac, if it doesn't automatically like open up as a new window, especially on a Mac, it might be down here. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to kind of have like this little grid space looking thing. So if you can't find that, in fact, this might be the old one that I have. I can show you what the new one will look like as well. It's pretty similar. It's like a different colored blue. So if I go to log in here, I already had everything set up here, so I can, I'll detect this. Okay. So if I go down here, oops. Open it up. So it's trying down here, right? So if you were seeing this, it might take a while. So I will kind of let this run. We'll see how quickly it'll do this. So see how it popped up down here for me? It didn't pop it up on the screen. So this is the icon that you'll actually be looking for. Looks like I haven't given it permissions yet. So you might just have to allow it to have permissions. Now it pops it up for me, but it might not do it automatically. You might have to kind of find that icon. Were you able to do that or no?
It's loading for this.
Okay. Well, at least you're very close to the last step that it's trying to download. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've had someone run into the issue where the download starts and stops. Just give it some time, and if it's not working by the end of class, talk to me and I can kind of get your email and send it to the tech people and they can kind of help you out a little bit. Because I'm not sure why it would start and stop unless, like, once again, there might be a setting they're aware of that's like preventing it from making changes or something to your device that you might have selected. All right. Any other questions? Anyone else having issues? Yeah.
So, I downloaded the file, like state of workspace, but like every time I open the file, I get like different options of that or where, of where to open the file from.
So we haven't opened up any files yet. We haven't gotten to that point. All you want to do is get the program open.
Yeah, so I try to open the program and then it downloads. So then I get like these options to choose from, which is like RStudio, Visual Code, Google and stuff. Is that something? I don't know.
So what is it? What's it exactly asking you? So if you go here,
Yeah, it's like,
what are the prompts that it's giving you?
so you, okay, so you have that part, right? You see it open,
Yep.
so I do that, but then just downloads a file. Yeah, I don't get that.
Did you try going to that gear and activating Citrix? Okay. Anybody else having any issues? We're all good? Yeah.
You download it, it's like a file on the download, doesn't.
So, are you on Mac? So no, yes, no.
That's what you want to do.
So it might be down on your toolbar. That's what I was showing her. It might not automatically pop the window open, but the icon will be down at the bottom. Okay. All right. So it looks like we've got at least only a couple people that are having issues. I can try to kind of help you guys. We'll get out of class a little bit early here today. Not right this second, but I'll try to kind of help you after class if you're still having issues. How many people by show of hands have gotten this to open up? Okay, so we got the vast majority of you. Once again, we don't have any assignments for this yet, so we've got some time to kind of work on these technical issues. The easiest way for me to do it is just do it as a group. I know it's probably, if it worked very easily for you, it's a little bit, you're wasting some time, it feels like, but I just want to make sure we're all kind of being able to use this starting next week, okay? So just a couple basics about how we're going to use this. So this is the program. We haven't opened up any data or anything yet, okay? So when we're on Canvas, right, I'm first going to just download, this .dta file. So I think it'll send it to my downloads. So when I'm in Stata here, I go to File, Open. This is this PC. So this should be, oh, it won't let me do this because it's on my downloads. I can't show you because this is a university computer. So you can access your own downloads files. But when you download these, in order for Stata to use them, they need to be on your OneDrive, right? So you will first download the file onto your computer. You'll then go into your downloads and drag it over into your OneDrive. And notice I have like you want to probably call this like ECON 371 data files or something like that. Right? So, excuse me, I forgot because this is a university computer, I can't access the downloads folder. You can access the downloads folder on your own device. So it's a little bit of a cumbersome process. You have to download that program and then drag it over to your OneDrive.
I can't access.
On your own computer? Okay. I was gonna say you should be able to download the, here, I'll show you on, I can show you what it looked like on my device here. So we'll go to, so I'll go to this program or this, file. I've downloaded it, should send it to my downloads. I will now go. Oh, no, I want to go to, just want Finder. So let me go to Arlantis. I'll go to my downloads. The file is in my downloads. I would then want to drag this to my OneDrive, put it in whatever folder I want it in. So I'm just going to drop it here so it's there. Now, when I go to the program, go to File, Open. I can then go to my OneDrive. I've moved the file there. I should now be able to open it up. So notice it puts a line of code in there that says like, use this file, but that's how you would open these files. You first have to download them to your device, move them to your OneDrive, and then you can open them up from your OneDrive. Okay. Is that making sense? Are you still having issues with it?
Yeah, I'm configured.
Okay, I'll talk with you. I hang around after class here. We'll kind of get out a little bit early. There's only a couple other things I want to show you to make sure most of us are at the same point. So once you have this file open, right? Or once you've opened this file up, you now have this window, which is like the actual program, and you're going to type different codes in here. So gen, blah, 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 blah. We'll talk more about that. You can type your codes down here in this command, right? So gen variable equal to 1. That would just create a variable that's equal to 1 for a bunch of different observations, okay? So I can type my commands in here, but where it's doing the work, and now notice it lets me know the variables that are in this data set I opened up. So it was some NBA data I had laying around. So it's got player, team, age. These are all the different variables. To actually look at the data that I've opened up here, you'll have these different icons. So there's one that has a magnifying glass and there's one that has a little pencil, right? So it looks like a grid with a magnifying glass and a grid with a pencil. I would almost never, there's not a lot of situations where you want to select the one that has a pencil. That allows you to edit the data, but you shouldn't be changing the data. The data is what it is. So if you just want to look at the data, use the one with a magnifying glass, it pops open a different window. This is the actual data set that is like living in behind the scenes, okay? So now I can look at the actual data set. So when we're working in Stata, a lot of the times you're going to have 3 windows open. So the first window you're going to have open is the actual program itself. The second kind of window you want to have open is so you can look at the actual data and see, okay, oh yeah, I just created this variable and it's equal to 1 for everybody. So I can kind of check to make sure the different code that I'm putting in there is doing what I think it's doing. The third window you're going to want to have open is when you type things in this command and they're in this window, they go away as soon as you close out of this program, right? So it doesn't save anything here. So what is really good practice and what you will have to upload for your problem sets, you can't just screenshot this, right? You need to have one file that you can kind of upload. You'll go up here, excuse me, and where it says, so here we've got like a little notepad with a pencil. So if you click down, you want to do this new do file editor. If you just click on the icon, it'll pop up a third window. This is almost like a Word document. This is where you're going to type all of your commands and then be able to save them. So when I typed this in, I can't save that anywhere, but what I can do is create that same line of code. Now, see, it's like untitled. If I go up here to File, Save, I can now save this to my OneDrive. And now if I go drag my OneDrive over here, there it is. It saves it as a do file. So this is not a data file. This is a do file. This is essentially just me saving the code that I typed in. Okay. So you'll have the program open and you don't, probably good practice, don't type your commands in there. That just has the program open. Have the data edit or data browser open so you can see the changes that you're actually, the variables you're adding to the data set. But then really all of the work, all the code that you're going to do, you should do it here. So then, oh gosh, this is why I can't do multiple. I could start doing a bunch of different lines of code. I can then kind of keep saving it. Now, one thing that's nice in these do files, instead of typing it into my command bar, if I select the code that I want to run, and I then go over here and hit this like play file or whatever, play icon, I guess it looks like a play button. Oh, it runs that line of code for me, right? And now when I look at the data, now I have a second variable, which is variable 2, which is just equal to 2 for everybody. Okay. So those are going to be the 3 windows that we're always using with Stata: the program itself, the data browser, and then also the do file where you're going to save all of the code that you're going to be typing in. Now, we're going to work through more examples of this, so don't worry. I know it's a lot right now at first, but I'm just kind of trying to show you the basics of what it's going to look like once I start using this in class to calculate some of the statistics that you probably know how to calculate by hand from 370. So we'll start out doing a lot of review next class and even early next week and just say, okay, we've already talked about these statistics. We know what a mean is. How can I calculate a mean in Stata, right? And then we'll kind of, I'll show you examples. We'll kind of save the code. And hopefully, after the first week or two, this starts to become a lot more kind of old hat, right? It becomes a little bit easier. I know it's a lot kind of initially though. Okay. Any questions up to this point? So if a couple of you are having some issues still with Stata, I'll try to kind of hang around after class and help you for a little bit. I think at this point, how far did we get through? So I know I have a lot of stuff that I want to get through this week. I'm probably overly ambitious, but I also want to let you get out a little bit early on day one. So what we'll start with on Thursday is really doing some review. So you might notice some of these things like we'll calculate random variable variances, random variable means. We'll start talking about things like skewness. Hopefully some of this rings a bell. And then you'll notice I have like stopping points where we'll kind of do some review of some statistics. We'll then see how do we do all this in Stata. And then we'll kind of do some more review of statistics. We'll talk about scatter plots, calculating correlations and covariances. We'll then kind of probably have examples where maybe do some of this work in Stata. Okay. So a lot of these blank slides are going to be things that either I'm drawing things on the dot cam or I'm also doing some additional work on Stata for us. Okay. Any other questions over anything that I've kind of discussed today? Or are we feeling hopefully at least how many of us kind of got Stata up and running? Did you open a file up with it? So I would try getting used to, I know it's kind of cumbersome, it's really annoying, but because it's a shared license, you can only open up files, I think from your OneDrive. So downloading them and having to move them over, I know is an additional step, but you don't have to pay for Stata, which is like really expensive. So that's kind of nice. So before I let you get out of here today, one more thing I do want to go through. So, all right. So we're going to start out racing into this semester. This is my 9-month-old kid, so give me a little bit of grace when it comes to answering emails. I am trying to do work-life balance right now. So between 8 and 4, I will, when I see emails come through, respond to them as quickly as possible. I mentioned Tuesdays and Thursdays, I get a little backed up with class, but Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm always, pretty quick with responses to emails. Fridays as well, really. It's just, it's harder for me to meet on Fridays because I have like meetings kind of sporadically. But really 8 and 4 is when you're going to be able to kind of communicate and expect a response from me. If I get an email from you at 6 or 7 at night, I need to be better about not seeing it at 6 or 7 at night because that means I'm looking at my inbox. But you may not get a response until the following morning. Okay. And even if you send it to me on Monday, Wednesday, I have a little bit of time for my first class Tuesdays and Thursdays. So usually my mornings of Tuesday and Thursday will just be me answering emails. So you'll probably get a response pretty early in the morning. Okay. Even today, I realized just with this program of Stata, I threw a lot at you that's probably new and you haven't like really worked with a data management program yet. So it's going to feel like we're drinking from a water hose, I think, the first few weeks of this class, because not only are we doing like review of statistics and like material, you're also trying to learn this completely new thing, which is a data management program, right? So I know it'll be a lot. We'll try to go pretty slow these first couple weeks. And I know that we're all not like professional coders, and I'm not expecting any of you have any coding experience. So I will keep it at a minimum as much as we can, okay, just to be able to get the statistics that we need. And then also, in any class, you should try to have fun. So I mentioned I had a student stop by with a project he's now doing on his own with some basketball data. Whatever interests you, there's a data set out there on it, right? So I want you to have fun in this class. Like, even though we're talking about statistics, eventually you'll start to get, I'll bring in examples where we start to answer some pretty interesting questions. And you can think about like, well, could I do this with this other type of a data set that interests me? And a couple points along the way, I'll try to show you ways that there's a lot of free data sets out there and you really can find them by a simple Google search, right? So I'll try to bring in as many different types of data sets as possible. Also, not just having fun in class. You guys are only young once. Take it from me. Have as much fun outside of class as you possibly can as well, while still maintaining your performance in your classes, okay? Other than that, I will be in my office starting office hours tomorrow. So if you want to stop by, I'll be there 10 to 1. Otherwise, try to get Stata working. I'll help those of you who are having some issues, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Oh, and please try to fill out that survey if you can. All right, let me stop this real quick, and I'll try to help you out.